A better life doesn't come from waiting around. It comes from building stronger routines. That single idea might be the most important thing you hear today. Your current life reflects the habits you keep. What you do each day, how you think, how you show up, and how you respond, all of it is shaped by routine. If you feel stuck, confused, or mentally drained, it's not because something is wrong with you. It's because your daily patterns are not serving you. They're working against you. The good news is this: you can change your entire mindset by altering what you do every day. Not next year, not next month, but starting now. These practices are straightforward, practical, and effective. They sharpen your thinking, lift your mood, strengthen your focus, and help you finally move forward. Apply just one and you'll notice a shift. Apply all of them and your life can transform. No hype, no fluff, just clear steps and real results. Begin each morning with intention and stop letting time slip away. Many people wake up without a plan, without urgency, without a reason for their actions. That's where most people lose momentum. It's not a lack of talent or intelligence, it's the way they begin the day. When you treat the morning like it matters, everything changes. You won't get this day back. Those hours are gone once they pass. If you don't use them to build something meaningful, they vanish forever. That should stir something inside you. Time is your life. Wasting it is the same as wasting your life. There's nothing more painful than looking back and realizing you let your days pass without doing anything meaningful. I'm not talking about being busy for the sake of busyness. I'm talking about being deliberate. Wake up and decide, this is what I'm doing today and I know why. That clarity fuels energy. It makes you sharper. It helps you say no to distractions. It makes your actions quicker, stronger, and more purposeful. Most people drift through routine, same thoughts, same habits, same excuses, same complaints, and then wonder why nothing changes. Waking up with purpose means you stop handing your time to whatever shows up. You stop letting the day control you and you take charge. People who grow and make a difference don't drift, they decide. That decision begins the moment they open their eyes. They don't scroll through their phone, hit snooze, or wander through the morning. They move with a reason. Purpose rewires everything. It gives you a fire that keeps you moving. When you have a reason, you don't need motivation. People with purpose act first and the feeling follows. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Create the moment by doing what needs to be done. Each morning ask yourself, what am I building today? Not what's on the to-do list, not what you feel like doing, but what are you constructing with your time? You build confidence by keeping promises to yourself. You build strength by facing what you avoid. You build a future by doing something today your future self will thank you for. Purpose is not a feeling, it's a decision backed by discipline. If you keep waking up without a plan, you're setting yourself up to repeat the same cycle. That's why people feel stuck and drained. It's not that life is unfair, it's that they live without intention. You can change your life by owning your mornings. Not someday, today. Value your time. Treat it like currency. Would you give away your last dollar to someone who didn't earn it? Then why give away your last hour to things that don't grow you? Spend your time wisely. Invest it in habits, thoughts, and actions that move you forward. Each time you use your time well, you build momentum. That momentum becomes progress. Progress builds confidence. Confidence builds a new mindset. It all begins when you stop wasting time. Tomorrow morning, don't reach for your phone. Don't check messages. Sit quietly for a few minutes. Breathe. Ask, what do I need to focus on today? Not what's urgent or expected, but what matters to me. That question can change your direction. Write it down. Set your focus. Start the day with strength, not reaction. You won't always feel like doing it. That's normal. Discipline isn't about feelings, it's about doing what's right even when it's uncomfortable. Over time, those actions become who you are. Your habits shape your identity. If you want to be strong, act like it when no one's watching. If you want to be focused, remove distractions and do the work. It starts small, but repetition makes it permanent. Success isn't a mystery. It's consistency around the right habits, waking with a reason, treating time seriously, and respecting yourself enough to stay disciplined. It's not complicated, but it requires work. Most people want the rewards without the routine. You're not most people. You're here because you know there's more. You've wasted enough time. You've delayed enough dreams. You've talked yourself out of progress too many times. Now it's time to stop. Decide on a mission for the morning and act like it matters. There are people counting on you, even if they don't say it. Your future is counting on you, and it only shows up when you do. So give yourself a fresh start tomorrow. Get up early. Think clearly. Move with intention and begin rewiring your life one habit at a time. Your purpose doesn't need to be grand. Start small and real. Maybe it's getting healthier, becoming more disciplined, building a business, fixing your finances, or changing how you think. Tie it to daily actions and make it matter today, because if it doesn't matter today, it won't matter at all. Don't live always preparing to start. That's how people waste decades. Treat time like money. Invest it in what grows you. Plan your day before the world pulls you in every direction. Once you're up, everything around you is designed to distract. People will want your time. Notifications will demand attention. Your mind will jump from one thing to another. If you haven't taken control first, the world will take it for you. Most people live in reaction. They respond to what appears instead of deciding how their day will go. They open their phone, check emails, scroll messages, and start following everyone else's agenda. The important things don't get done. Goals remain goals. Stress builds. The mind gets cluttered and the day ends with the question, where did the time go? You can't afford to live that way if you want to change your life. Planning your day sets the tone. It keeps you centered and ensures the right things get done instead of just staying busy. Being busy is not the same as being productive. You can be busy all day and still fall behind. When you plan, you remove guesswork. You don't wonder what to do next because you've already decided. That's the difference between progress and procrastination. Planning reduces anxiety. Your mind gets overwhelmed when you try to hold too much. Spend 5 to 10 minutes in the morning to write down your top 3 goals. Decide your priorities, schedule deep work, and create space for focus. When you do that, you stop leaving your life to chance. Planning builds discipline and teaches you to value your time. You stop waiting for motivation and rely on structure. When you schedule something, it becomes a commitment. That commitment is key. Not just to tasks, but to growth. You can't grow if your days are full of noise and confusion. You need space to think and time to execute. That starts with a plan. Ask yourself, where will I put my energy today? What am I avoiding that needs to be done? Who do I need to follow up with? What distractions must I cut? These questions sharpen you and keep you from drifting. Planning also helps form habits. Habits don't form from repetition alone, they form from clarity. If you say you'll read more but never schedule it, you'll skip it. If you schedule reading from 7 to 7:30, it becomes real. Structure beats willpower. When life gets messy, your plan holds you steady. It helps you win even on hard days. If you only work when you feel great, you won't get far. But if you plan, you'll get results whether you feel like it or not. Imagine starting the day knowing what deserves your energy. That's how you make progress and end the day with pride instead of regret. Planning touches everything: work, health, goals, relationships, and how you feel at night. It's a foundation for a new identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone always behind and start seeing yourself as someone in charge, someone who respects time and shows up with focus. That shift changes how you live and what you achieve. Speak to yourself with respect. The internal conversation you have matters. Most people's inner voice is harsh, impatient, and critical. If someone else spoke to you that way, you'd cut them off. Yet you listen to that voice because you never learned to treat yourself with the same kindness you give others. To rewire your mindset, change your internal language. You can't build confidence by tearing yourself down. You can't grow by feeding doubt. The way you speak to yourself becomes the way you see yourself, and that determines what you expect from life. Start noticing the words you use. Would you say those things to a friend you admire? If not, stop saying them to yourself. Treat yourself with the same patience and encouragement you'd offer someone learning. Admit mistakes without calling yourself a failure. Want to improve without thinking you're broken. When you replace negative self-talk with constructive language, you train your mind. Say, "I'm still learning," instead of, "I'm not good at this." Say, "This is hard, but I've handled hard things before," instead of, "I can't handle this." That's mental training. It rewires how you think. Respectful self-talk builds mental toughness. You'll need it when things get rough. If your inner voice turns against you, you'll quit. But if it's calm and firm, you'll stay the course and remind yourself why you started. Discipline without disrespect is the balance you need. Push yourself because you know what you're capable of, not because you believe you're doomed to fail. Start being the voice you wish you had when you struggled. Celebrate effort, not just outcomes. Build trust with yourself. Confidence comes from the relationship you have with yourself, not from external praise. When you speak with encouragement and honesty, you become your own supporter and need less approval from others. You'll still have bad days and negative thoughts, but what matters is how you respond. Correct the thought and replace it with something stronger. Each correction is progress. Each kind word is a building block. Over time, old patterns lose their hold. When hesitation shows up, act. That moment when your mind convinces you to wait is the turning point where your future is decided. Delay often disguises itself as logic. "I'm tired, I'll be ready tomorrow, this isn't the right time." Those sound reasonable, but they're habits of hesitation. The more you delay, the stronger that habit becomes. You can't build anything with hesitation. You can't grow while always postponing. The breakthrough comes when you act exactly when your mind says to wait. It's not about motivation, it's about response. In the first few seconds when your brain says pause, step forward. Decide to be the person who follows through. Every time you act despite resistance, you build discipline. You send a message to your brain that you're in control. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need full energy. You just need to start. That decision creates momentum. Momentum brings energy and clarity. The task you were avoiding becomes manageable. Starting is often the hardest part. Think about how many things would be finished if you had started when it was time. The habit of postponing steals more dreams than failure ever will. The longer you delay, the heavier tasks feel. A 1-hour job becomes a mental burden. Over time, that weight turns into guilt. It's not about ability, it's about pattern. Your brain prefers comfort and builds pathways that avoid discomfort. But you're here to grow, and growth happens on the other side of action. Practice acting quickly. Wake when the alarm rings. Answer the email you've been avoiding. Start the workout. Open the book. Sit down to work. These small actions prove you're becoming someone who follows through. Consistency changes identity. When you act despite resistance, your self-respect grows. You stop seeing yourself as someone who quits and start seeing yourself as someone who finishes. That shift drives long-term change. Respect yourself by aligning your life with your goals. Don't give in to delay when you promised progress. When you take action instead of hesitating, you free your mind. Unfinished tasks linger and drain energy. Handle things immediately and you create space for focus, creativity, and confidence. It's not about perfection, it's about presence. Delay keeps you trapped in someday, but someday doesn't exist. There is only now. Train yourself to act the moment hesitation appears and you take back control. You stop being a victim of your emotions and create the right feeling by doing the right thing. Everything you want requires execution. Goals respond to action, not intention. If you delay, opportunities pass, energy fades, and momentum dies. Act faster than your excuses. Move now. Start. Show up. That's the difference between those who grow and those who stay the same. Push yourself to finish what you start. Anyone can begin, finishing is what separates you from the crowd. Real growth happens not in the excitement of starting but in the quiet hours when it's hard to keep going. Distractions, doubt, boredom, and discomfort all appear when you try to stay consistent. Train yourself to persist even when it's no longer thrilling. When you leave things half done, they become mental clutter. You might tell yourself it's no big deal, but unfinished work lingers and weighs on you. Finish what you start and you build character. If you follow these ideas and want more content like this, check out Momentum Audiobooks for similar guidance and practical steps to keep moving forward. When you commit to finishing what you begin, you create a pattern of completion that changes how you feel about yourself. Leaving tasks half done is more than an inconvenience. It becomes a background noise that steals focus and energy. Every unfinished item sits in your mind like a small weight, tugging at your attention and making it harder to concentrate on what matters. When you finish something, even a small task, you clear that weight. You free up mental space. You prove to yourself that you follow through. That proof compounds. The more you complete, the more you trust your own word. That trust is the foundation of confidence. Finishing what you start also sharpens your decision-making. When you decide to see something through, you stop wasting time on second-guessing and you begin to learn how to solve problems instead of avoiding them. You learn to push through boredom, to work through doubt, and to keep going when the initial excitement fades. That is where skill is built. That is where mastery grows. People who finish are the ones who develop depth. They don't just collect beginnings, they create outcomes. And outcomes are what change lives. There is a practical side to this habit as well. When you finish tasks, you reduce the number of open loops in your life. Open loops are the unfinished things that keep returning to your mind. They drain willpower and make it harder to start new work. By closing loops quickly, you conserve energy for the things that truly matter. You also build a reputation with yourself and with others. People notice reliability. They notice when someone consistently completes what they promise. That reliability opens doors. It creates opportunities. It builds relationships based on trust. Another habit that rewires your mindset is learning to manage your environment. Your surroundings shape your behavior more than you realize. If your space is cluttered, your mind will be cluttered. If your phone is constantly buzzing, your attention will be fractured. You need to design a setting that supports the person you want to become. That means removing obvious distractions, creating zones for focused work, and making the tools you need easy to access. It also means curating the people and media you expose yourself to. If you spend time with people who complain and drain energy, you will find yourself slipping into the same patterns. If you consume content that keeps you anxious or reactive, your thinking will follow. Protect your environment like you would protect an investment. Small changes in your surroundings lead to big changes in your behavior. Reading and learning consistently is another habit that compounds over time. You don't need to read 100 books a year to make a difference. You need to read regularly and with purpose. Choose material that stretches your thinking, that challenges assumptions, and that gives you practical ideas you can test. When you read with the intention to apply, knowledge becomes action. It becomes a tool you can use to solve problems and create new possibilities. Make learning a daily ritual. Even 20 minutes a day adds up to massive growth over months and years. The person who reads and applies what they learn will always outpace the person who waits for inspiration. Movement and physical care are not optional. Your body and mind are connected. When you move, your brain functions better. When you sleep well, your decisions improve. When you eat with intention, your energy stabilizes. Treat your body like the engine that powers everything else. Regular exercise doesn't have to be extreme. Consistency matters more than intensity. Short, focused workouts done regularly will change your energy levels, your mood, and your ability to focus. Sleep is non-negotiable. Protect it. Schedule it. Guard it from late-night scrolling and unnecessary stress. When you prioritize physical health, you give yourself the capacity to perform at a higher level mentally and emotionally. Another powerful habit is to simplify your commitments. People often overcommit because they fear missing out or because they want to please others. But every commitment is a claim on your time and energy. Be selective. Say no more often. When you say yes, make sure it aligns with your priorities. This is not about being selfish. It's about being strategic. You can only do a few things exceptionally well. Choose those few and give them your best. The rest can be delegated, delayed, or declined. Clarity about what matters reduces stress and increases impact. Reflection is a habit that many overlook. Taking time to review your day, your week, and your progress creates a feedback loop that accelerates growth. Reflection helps you see what worked, what didn't, and what needs to change. It prevents you from repeating the same mistakes and helps you double down on what's effective. Spend a few minutes each evening to note one win and one lesson. Over time, those notes become a map of your progress. They show you how small actions lead to big results. They also keep you honest with yourself. Gratitude is not a fluffy add-on. It's a practical habit that shifts your perspective. When you regularly acknowledge what's going well, you train your brain to notice opportunities instead of problems. Gratitude reduces stress and increases resilience. It doesn't mean ignoring challenges. It means balancing them with recognition of what's working. Start and end your day by naming a few things you appreciate. That practice rewires your emotional baseline and makes it easier to handle setbacks. Surround yourself with people who elevate you. Your social circle influences your habits more than you might think. Seek out people who are doing the work you want to do. Learn from them. Support them. Let their standards rub off on you. At the same time, be the kind of person others can rely on. Contribution builds connection. When you help others grow, you reinforce your own growth. Community is a multiplier. It accelerates learning, accountability, and momentum. Finally, remember that progress is rarely linear. There will be plateaus, setbacks, and days when nothing seems to move. That is normal. What separates those who succeed from those who don't is the ability to persist through the flat stretches. Keep showing up. Keep doing the small things that compound. Over time, those small things create a trajectory that is unmistakable. Momentum builds quietly until one day you look back and realize you are far from where you started. If you want consistent reminders and practical steps to keep this work alive, Momentum Audiobooks offers concise guidance that fits into a busy life. Use resources like that to reinforce the habits you are building, but remember the real change happens in the daily choices you make. Speak to yourself with the same respect you would give to someone you admire. The inner dialogue you carry shapes your choices more than any external advice. Most people run a constant commentary in their heads that is impatient, critical, and quick to judge. That voice becomes the lens through which you interpret every setback, every success, and every ordinary moment. If you want to change how you act, start by changing how you speak to yourself. Replace the harsh, automatic lines with steady, honest, and encouraging language. When you slip up, note it, learn from it, and move on. When you make progress, acknowledge it. This is not about pretending everything is perfect, it's about being fair and useful with your words. Imagine coaching a friend who is trying something new. You wouldn't tell them they're hopeless after one mistake. You'd point out what went well, what to adjust, and why the effort matters. Use that same tone for yourself. When a thought appears that says, "I always fail at this," correct it with something more accurate and constructive. "I'm learning how this works, I'll get better with practice." When you catch yourself minimizing your effort, remind yourself that effort matters and that consistency compounds. Over time, these small corrections change the default script in your head. The new script doesn't remove difficulty, but it gives you a steady companion when things get hard. Respectful self-talk also changes how you handle fear. Fear is a signal, not a verdict. When you feel anxious about a task, name the feeling and then ask a practical question: what's the smallest step I can take right now? That reframes fear from a stop sign into a prompt for action. The habit of asking practical questions when emotions rise trains your mind to respond rather than react. It builds resilience because you learn to move through discomfort instead of letting it define you. Another shift that rewires your mindset is acting the moment your mind suggests delay. There's a brief window when hesitation appears and you can either step forward or let the excuse win. That window is often measured in seconds. If you wait to feel ready, you'll rarely start. The people who make progress don't wait for perfect conditions, they begin before they feel fully prepared. They understand that momentum is created by movement, not by waiting. So when your brain offers a reason to postpone, treat it like a test of commitment. Answer with a small action. Open the document. Send the message. Put on your shoes. That tiny movement breaks the pattern of delay and signals to your brain that you are someone who follows through. Practice a simple rule: when you notice hesitation, do one thing immediately that moves the task forward. It doesn't have to be the whole job. It just has to be a meaningful step. Over time, those micro-actions accumulate into real progress. The habit of immediate action rewires your identity. You start to see yourself as a person who begins and continues, not as someone who waits for the right mood. That identity shift is powerful because it changes how you approach future moments of doubt. Pair action with planning. Acting fast doesn't mean acting without direction. Use short, clear plans to guide your immediate steps. When you know the next small move, it's easier to take it. Break larger goals into tiny, visible actions that can be completed in short bursts. That reduces the friction of starting and makes the first step obvious. When the first step is obvious, hesitation has less room to grow. Cultivate a habit of finishing what you start within the same day when possible. There's a special kind of satisfaction and clarity that comes from closing a loop before you sleep. It reduces mental clutter and frees your attention for the next day. If a task truly cannot be finished in one sitting, aim to complete a meaningful milestone that leaves the project in a clean state. That way, when you return, you don't waste energy reorienting yourself. You pick up where you left off and keep moving. Learn to separate urgency from importance. The world will always present urgent demands that feel pressing but don't move you toward your goals. Your job is to protect the hours that matter. Schedule blocks of time for deep work and treat them as non-negotiable. During those blocks, remove distractions and focus on the highest impact tasks. The habit of protecting focus time is one of the fastest ways to accelerate progress because it multiplies the value of your effort. Practice small acts of courage regularly. Courage is not a single heroic moment, it's a series of small choices to do what matters despite discomfort. Say the hard thing in a conversation. Start the project you've been avoiding. Ask for feedback. Each act of courage builds your tolerance for discomfort and expands what you believe is possible. Over time, those small acts compound into a life that feels bolder and more aligned with your values. Be intentional about the stories you tell yourself. Stories shape behavior. If your story is that you're always behind, you'll act in ways that confirm that narrative. Rewrite the story to reflect the person you want to become. Tell a story of steady progress, of learning from mistakes, and of consistent effort. Use evidence from your own life, small wins, completed tasks, moments you showed up, to support the new narrative. The more you repeat that story, the more your actions will follow. Finally, build systems that make these habits easier. Rituals, simple rules, and clear next steps reduce the need for willpower. Create a morning routine that centers you, a planning ritual that sets your priorities, and an evening ritual that closes the day. Use timers to create urgency, and keep a short list of the next actions for each project. When systems are in place, you spend less energy deciding and more energy doing. If you want short reminders and practical prompts to keep these habits alive, Momentum Audiobooks offers concise cues that fit into a busy schedule. Use external nudges to support your internal work, but remember the real change happens in the repeated choices you make each day. Speak kindly to yourself, act quickly when hesitation appears, protect focus time, and finish what you start. Do these things consistently and you will find your mindset shifting, your confidence growing, and your life moving in the direction you choose. When your mind offers reasons to wait, treat that moment as the crossroads it is. The voice that says, "Not now," or "later," is not your ally, it's a habit trying to protect comfort. The breakthrough comes when you move before the excuse finishes speaking. There's a tiny window between thought and action where your future is decided. If you step forward in that window, you begin to rewire your brain. If you let the hesitation win, you strengthen the pattern of delay. So practice acting quickly. When the idea appears, take one small, visible step immediately. Open the file, write the first sentence, lace up your shoes, send the short message. That single motion breaks the loop of avoidance and signals to your mind that you are someone who starts. Acting fast doesn't mean rushing without direction. It means pairing speed with a clear next step. Break your work into tiny, obvious actions so the first move is always simple. When the next step is visible, hesitation has nowhere to hide. Use short timers to create urgency and reduce the friction of getting started. Commit to 5 minutes of focused effort and you'll often find the 5 minutes turns into 30. Momentum is contagious. Once you begin, energy follows. The habit of immediate action trains your brain to expect movement instead of delay, and over time that expectation becomes automatic. There's a second habit that compounds everything: finish what you start. Starting is easy, finishing is where character is built. When you leave things half done, they linger in your mind and drain your energy. Unfinished work creates a background noise that steals focus and reduces your capacity to take on new challenges. Make completion a rule. If a task can be finished in the same sitting, finish it. If it can't, complete a meaningful milestone that leaves the project in a clean state. That way, when you return, you don't waste time reorienting yourself. You pick up where you left off and keep moving forward. Finishing also trains your problem-solving muscles. When you commit to seeing something through, you learn to work around obstacles instead of avoiding them. You learn to tolerate boredom, to push through doubt, and to keep going when the initial excitement fades. That's where depth is formed. People who finish are the ones who create outcomes. Outcomes change circumstances. Outcomes build credibility with yourself and with others. Reliability opens doors. When you consistently complete what you promise, opportunities follow. Protecting your attention is a practical habit that supports both starting and finishing. Attention is the currency of progress. When you allow constant interruptions, your work fragments and your momentum dies. Create blocks of uninterrupted time for deep work and treat them as sacred. Turn off notifications, close unrelated tabs, and let others know you are unavailable during those windows. Single tasking produces far more meaningful results than multitasking ever will. The fewer interruptions you accept, the deeper your focus and the faster you finish. Energy management matters as much as time management. You can schedule the perfect plan, but if your energy is low you won't execute. Learn your natural rhythms and place your most demanding work where your focus is strongest. Protect those windows from interruptions. Use lower energy periods for routine tasks that don't require deep concentration. Fuel your body with consistent meals, move regularly, and prioritize sleep. When your physical systems are supported, your mental systems follow. You'll find decisions are easier, creativity flows more readily, and finishing becomes less of a struggle. Boundaries are a tool for protecting both attention and energy. Saying no is not a failure, it's a strategic choice. Every yes is a claim on your time and attention. Be deliberate about what you accept. When you protect your calendar and your focus, you create the conditions to complete the work that matters. Communicate your limits clearly and kindly. People respect those who value their time, and that respect often returns in the form of better opportunities and deeper trust. Accountability accelerates progress. When you tell someone you will finish something by a certain time, you create external pressure that helps you follow through. Use accountability partners, small groups, or public commitments to keep momentum. The social cost of not finishing is a powerful motivator. Choose accountability that supports growth rather than shame. The goal is to build a pattern of completion, not to punish yourself for occasional slips. Rituals reduce decision fatigue and make transitions easier. Create a short routine that signals the start of focused work and another that marks its end. A simple breathing exercise, a specific playlist, or a tidy workspace can become a cue that your brain associates with focus. At the end of a session, write a quick note about what you accomplished and what the next step is. That closing ritual prevents tasks from lingering in your head overnight and makes it easier to return with clarity. When setbacks happen, treat them as information, not identity. Projects will stall, obstacles will appear, and motivation will dip. Have a recovery plan, identify the smallest next step, set a short timer, and take that step. Small, consistent actions rebuild momentum faster than waiting for inspiration. Ask what you can learn and what adjustment will move the work forward. That mindset keeps you resilient and focused on solutions rather than excuses. Celebrate completion in ways that reinforce the habit. Recognition doesn't need to be grand. A moment of quiet acknowledgement, a note in your journal, or a small reward can signal to your brain that finishing is valuable. These celebrations create positive feedback loops that make you more likely to repeat the behavior. Over time, the habit of finishing becomes self-reinforcing. You finish, you feel competent, and that competence fuels more finishing. Simplify your system so finishing is easier. Reduce the number of tools, streamline your workflows, and make the next action obvious. Complexity breeds procrastination. When you remove unnecessary steps and clarify the path forward, starting and finishing become more likely. Use templates, checklists, and standard processes for recurring work. These structures reduce friction and free your attention for the creative parts of the job. Anchor these habits in identity. Don't just aim to act quickly and finish tasks, aim to become the kind of person who does those things. Language matters. Say, I am someone who starts and finishes, and then act in ways that prove that statement true. Identity-based habits are powerful because they change how you see yourself, and that new self-image guides future behavior. Each completed task is evidence that you are that person. Over time, your actions and your identity align, and the habits become part of who you are. Small wins compound into momentum. When you consistently take immediate action, protect your attention, manage your energy, and finish what you start, you create a forward force that carries you through the hard days. Momentum is not dramatic, it's quiet and steady. It builds when you do the right things repeatedly. One small step today makes the next step easier tomorrow. Keep stacking those steps and you will look back and be surprised by how far you've come. If you want short, practical reminders and concise prompts to keep these habits alive, Momentum Audiobooks offers quick strategies that fit into a busy life. Use external nudges to support your internal discipline, but remember the real change happens in the repeated choices you make each day. Act quickly when hesitation appears, protect your focus, finish what you start, and let small wins build the momentum that carries you forward. When you decide to push yourself to finish what you start, you begin to build a new standard for how you operate. Starting is easy, anyone can begin with enthusiasm. Finishing is where character is forged. When you leave things half done, they linger in your mind and quietly drain your energy. That unfinished work becomes a background weight that pulls at your attention and makes it harder to focus on what matters next. Completing tasks, even small ones, clears that weight and frees your mind. Each completed item is proof that you follow through, and that proof compounds into trust in yourself. Finish what you start by making completion the default. If a task can be closed in the same sitting, close it. If it cannot, create a clear stopping point that leaves the project in a clean state. That means defining a meaningful milestone before you pause so that when you return you can pick up without friction. This habit reduces the mental cost of resuming work and prevents projects from turning into perpetual background noise. Over time, the habit of finishing rewires your brain to expect closure rather than abandonment. There is a practical rhythm to finishing. Break larger projects into visible next steps that can be completed in short bursts. Use time blocks to create urgency and reduce the friction of getting started. When the first step is obvious and small, your brain is less likely to invent reasons to delay. Pair that with a rule: when you begin, aim to complete a meaningful portion before you stop. That trains your mind to move toward completion and makes the act of finishing more automatic. Finishing also sharpens your problem-solving skills. When you commit to seeing something through, you learn to work around obstacles instead of avoiding them. You learn to tolerate boredom, to push through doubt, and to keep going when the initial excitement fades. That is where depth is formed. People who finish are the ones who create outcomes. Outcomes change circumstances and build credibility with yourself and with others. Reliability opens doors. When you consistently complete what you promise, opportunities follow. Protecting your attention is essential to finishing. Attention is the currency of progress. When you allow constant interruptions, your work fragments and momentum dies. Create blocks of uninterrupted time for focused work and treat them as sacred. Turn off notifications, close unrelated tabs, and let others know you are unavailable during those windows. Single tasking produces far more meaningful results than multitasking ever will. The fewer interruptions you accept, the deeper your focus and the faster you finish. Energy management matters as much as time management. You can schedule the perfect plan, but if your energy is low you will not execute. Learn your natural rhythms and place your most demanding work where your focus is strongest. Protect those windows from interruptions. Use lower energy periods for routine tasks that do not require deep concentration. Fuel your body with consistent meals, move regularly, and prioritize sleep. When your physical systems are supported, your mental systems follow. Decisions become easier, creativity flows more readily, and finishing becomes less of a struggle. Boundaries are a practical tool for finishing. Saying no is not a moral failing, it is a strategic choice. Every yes is a claim on your time and attention. Be deliberate about what you accept. When you protect your calendar and your focus, you create the conditions to complete the work that matters. Communicate your limits clearly and kindly. People respect those who value their time, and that respect often returns in the form of better opportunities and deeper trust. Accountability accelerates completion. When you tell someone you will finish something by a certain time, you create external pressure that helps you follow through. Use accountability partners, small groups, or public commitments to keep momentum. The social cost of not finishing is a powerful motivator. Choose accountability that supports growth rather than shame. The goal is to build a pattern of completion, not to punish yourself for occasional slips. Rituals reduce decision fatigue and make transitions easier. Create a short routine that signals the start of focused work and another that marks its end. A simple breathing exercise, a specific playlist, or a tidy workspace can become a cue that your brain associates with focus. At the end of a session, write a quick note about what you accomplished and what the next step is. That closing ritual prevents tasks from lingering in your head overnight and makes it easier to return with clarity. When setbacks happen, treat them as information, not identity. Projects will stall, obstacles will appear, and motivation will dip. Have a recovery plan, identify the smallest next step, set a short timer, and take that step. Small, consistent actions rebuild momentum faster than waiting for inspiration. Ask what you can learn and what adjustment will move the work forward. That mindset keeps you resilient and focused on solutions rather than excuses. Celebrate completion in ways that reinforce the habit. Recognition does not need to be grand. A moment of quiet acknowledgement, a note in your journal, or a small reward can signal to your brain that finishing is valuable. These celebrations create positive feedback loops that make you more likely to repeat the behavior. Over time, the habit of finishing becomes self-reinforcing. You finish, you feel competent, and that competence fuels more finishing. Simplify your system so finishing is easier. Reduce the number of tools, streamline your workflows, and make the next action obvious. Complexity breeds procrastination. When you remove unnecessary steps and clarify the path forward, starting and finishing become more likely. Use templates, checklists, and standard processes for recurring work. These structures reduce friction and free your attention for the creative parts of the job. Anchor finishing in identity. Don't just aim to complete tasks, aim to become the kind of person who completes them. Language matters. Say, I am someone who finishes what I start, and then act in ways that prove that statement true. Identity-based habits are powerful because they change how you see yourself, and that new self-image guides future behavior. Each completed task is evidence that you are that person. Over time, your actions and your identity align, and finishing becomes part of who you are. Small wins compound into momentum. When you consistently take immediate action, protect your attention, manage your energy, and finish what you start, you create a forward force that carries you through the hard days. Momentum is not dramatic, it is quiet and steady. It builds when you do the right things repeatedly. One small step today makes the next step easier tomorrow. Keep stacking those steps and you will look back and be surprised by how far you have come. If you want concise reminders and practical prompts to keep these habits alive, Momentum Audiobooks offers short strategies that fit into a busy life. Use external nudges to support your internal discipline, but remember the real change happens in the repeated choices you make each day. Finish the small things, protect your energy, set boundaries, and build systems that make completion the default. Do that consistently and you will find your days clearer, your confidence stronger, and your results unmistakable. When you commit to finishing what you start, the next step is to build systems that make progress inevitable rather than optional. Systems are the invisible scaffolding that turn good intentions into reliable outcomes. Instead of relying on willpower alone, design routines that reduce friction and automate the right choices. That might mean a simple evening checklist that prepares you for the next morning, a dedicated workspace that signals focus, or a short pre-work ritual that primes your attention. The point is to make the path forward obvious so you waste less energy deciding and more energy doing. One powerful technique is habit stacking. Attach a new habit to an existing one so the cue is already in place. If you already make coffee each morning, use that moment to review your top priority for the day. If you always close your laptop at a certain time, use that closing as a cue to write one sentence about what you accomplished. These small pairings create momentum because they piggyback on routines you already perform. Over time, the stacked habits become seamless parts of your day and require far less conscious effort. Feedback loops are another essential element. Without clear feedback, you can't tell whether your actions are working. Create simple ways to measure progress that matter to your goals. Instead of vague metrics like, do better, track behaviors you control, days you showed up, minutes of focused work, or the number of meaningful steps completed. Use those data points to adjust your approach. If something isn't producing results, change the method, not the goal. Small, frequent feedback keeps you honest and helps you iterate faster. Learn to treat discomfort as a signal rather than a stop sign. Growth often arrives disguised as unease, a difficult conversation, a longer practice session, or a task that feels awkward at first. When you reframe discomfort as the price of progress, you stop avoiding the very moments that expand your capacity. Practice leaning into short, intentional stretches of discomfort so your tolerance grows. Over time, what once felt intolerable becomes manageable, and your range of possible actions widens. Create a culture of small experiments. Instead of committing to massive, untested changes, try short trials that let you learn quickly. Test a new morning routine for 2 weeks. Try a focused work block for 3 days and note the difference. These experiments reduce the fear of failure because they are temporary and reversible. They also produce rapid learning, which you can use to refine your systems. The habit of experimenting keeps you curious and prevents stagnation. Protect your attention by simplifying choices. Decision fatigue is real. The more trivial choices you make, the less mental energy you have for important work. Reduce the number of daily decisions by standardizing meals, simplifying wardrobe choices, or batching similar tasks together. When fewer small choices demand your attention, you preserve willpower for the moments that matter. Simplicity creates clarity, and clarity accelerates execution. Invest in your capacity to sustain effort. Capacity is built through consistent, incremental improvements, better sleep, regular movement, focused practice, and time for recovery. These investments pay dividends because they increase the amount of high-quality work you can do. Think of capacity as the engine that powers your habits. Without it, even the best systems will stall. Prioritize the basics so your engine runs smoothly. Tell a better story about your progress. The narratives you repeat shape how you behave. Replace stories of scarcity and failure with ones that emphasize learning and steady improvement. Use concrete evidence, small wins, completed tasks, and moments you showed up, to support the new story. When your internal narrative aligns with your actions, motivation becomes more reliable because it's rooted in reality rather than wishful thinking. Make space for reflection and course correction. Regularly step back and ask what's working and what isn't. Reflection is not self-flagellation, it's a practical tool for improvement. Use short weekly reviews to celebrate wins, identify obstacles, and plan the next steps. These reviews keep you adaptive and prevent small problems from becoming entrenched patterns. Finally, remember that influence compounds. The habits you build don't just change your output, they change the people around you and the opportunities that come your way. When you consistently finish what you start, protect your attention, and invest in capacity, you become someone others can rely on. That reliability attracts collaboration, trust, and new possibilities. Your daily choices ripple outward. If you want concise prompts and practical nudges to keep these practices alive, Momentum Audiobooks offers short, actionable cues that fit into a busy life. Use external reminders to support your internal systems, but know that the real transformation happens in the small, repeated choices you make every day. There is a habit that quietly separates people who make steady progress from those who spin their wheels, the practice of returning to the work with curiosity instead of judgment. When things go wrong, the instinct is often to blame, to shrink, or to hide. That reaction keeps you stuck. A different response rewires your mindset. Treat setbacks as experiments that reveal what to change next. When a plan fails, ask what the data shows, not what the failure says about your worth. Look for one small adjustment you can test tomorrow. This approach turns disappointment into information and keeps momentum moving forward. Curiosity also changes how you learn. Instead of collecting reasons why something won't work, collect questions that point to solutions. Replace, "Why did I fail?" with, "What did I miss?" and, "What can I try differently?" Those questions open possibilities. They invite iteration. They make the next step clearer. Over time, a curious stance trains your brain to notice patterns, to spot leverage points, and to adapt faster. That adaptability is what separates people who plateau from people who keep growing. Another habit that compounds quietly is consistency in small actions. Big, dramatic efforts feel impressive, but they rarely produce lasting change. What matters is the daily repetition of modest behaviors. 10 minutes of focused practice every day beats a single marathon session once a month. The key is to choose actions that are sustainable and to protect them with simple rules. When you commit to a small, non-negotiable practice, you remove the drama from discipline. You make progress inevitable because the action becomes part of your routine rather than a heroic effort you must summon. Pair consistency with clarity. Know the specific behavior you want to repeat and why it matters. Vague goals like get better or work harder are easy to ignore. Specific commitments, read 20 pages, write for 20 minutes, walk 30 minutes, are actionable. When you can measure the behavior, you can track it. When you track it, you can improve it. That loop of clarity, action, and feedback is the engine of steady growth. Long-term thinking is another habit that protects you from short-term noise. It's easy to be swayed by immediate results, by likes, by quick wins, or by the latest trend. Long-term thinking asks a different question: what will compound over years? It privileges the slow, steady investments that build capability, relationships, and reputation. When you orient toward the long game, you tolerate temporary discomfort because you can see the larger payoff. That perspective reduces anxiety and helps you make choices that align with the life you want to build. Generosity is a habit that pays unexpected dividends. Helping others, sharing what you know, and offering support are not distractions from your goals, they are accelerants. When you contribute without keeping score, you build goodwill, strengthen relationships, and create networks that return value in ways you can't predict. Generosity also shifts your focus outward, which reduces the self-absorption that often fuels doubt and fear. The people you help become allies, collaborators, and sources of new ideas. Over time, a generous approach multiplies opportunities. Curate your inputs with intention. The information you consume shapes your thinking more than you realize. If your feed is full of outrage, comparison, or constant distraction, your mind will mirror that chaos. Choose sources that expand your perspective, that teach you something useful, and that model the behavior you want to adopt. Limit passive scrolling and replace it with active learning. Read thoughtfully, listen to conversations that challenge you, and follow creators who push you to improve. Your mental diet matters as much as your physical one. Practice decisive simplification. Complexity is the enemy of execution. When projects become tangled with too many moving parts, it's easy to stall. Learn to strip things down to the essential next step. Ask, what is the smallest version of this that would still move the needle? Then do that. Simplicity creates clarity, and clarity creates action. The discipline of simplifying also protects your energy and reduces the friction that leads to procrastination. Build a habit of scheduled reflection that is short and focused. Weekly reviews don't need to be long to be effective. Spend a few minutes each week noting what worked, what didn't, and what you will change next week. Use that time to celebrate progress and to course correct. These brief pauses prevent small problems from becoming entrenched and keep your efforts aligned with your priorities. Reflection is not self-criticism, it's strategic adjustment. Develop a tolerance for imperfect starts. Waiting for the perfect plan or the ideal conditions is a form of avoidance. Perfectionism disguises fear as prudence. Instead, adopt a bias toward imperfect action. Launch the draft, publish the first version, make the call. You can refine as you go. The act of starting creates feedback that informs better decisions. Imperfect starts lead to real learning, perfect plans often lead to paralysis. Protect your creative time by creating friction for distractions. If you want to write, design, or think deeply, make it harder to do the things that pull you away. Move your phone to another room, use website blockers, or set a visible timer that signals you are in a protected session. Small barriers to distraction make it easier to stay focused. Over time, those protected sessions become the source of your best work. Finally, cultivate a quiet confidence that comes from repeated practice rather than external validation. When you build a track record of showing up, of finishing, and of learning from setbacks, your sense of competence grows from the inside out. You no longer need constant approval to act. You trust the process because you have evidence it works. That inner trust is the foundation of resilience. It allows you to take bigger risks, to recover faster from failure, and to keep moving when the path is unclear. If you want short prompts and practical cues to help maintain these habits, Momentum Audiobooks provides concise reminders that fit into a busy life. Use those nudges to support your practice, but remember the real work happens in the daily choices you make. Stay curious, keep your actions small and consistent, simplify where possible, and protect the time and energy needed to do meaningful work. Over months and years, those choices compound into a life that reflects your intentions. Decide what you will protect and then protect it fiercely. Not every hour deserves the same level of attention, and not every project deserves your best energy. The habit that separates people who drift from people who build is the ability to choose a few priorities and defend them against everything that wants a piece of you. That means creating non-negotiable blocks of time for the work that matters, and then treating those blocks like appointments with your future. It means telling others, politely but firmly, that you are unavailable during those windows. It means accepting that saying yes to one thing is saying no to something else. When you make those choices deliberately, you stop reacting to the loudest demand and start responding to what will actually move you forward. Learn to make decisions quickly and to live with the consequences. Indecision is a slow form of failure because it wastes time and energy. The people who progress are not those who never make mistakes, they are those who make decisions, learn from the results, and adjust. Give yourself a deadline for small decisions and a framework for larger ones. Use a simple rule to break ties: which option moves you closer to your long-term goals? If both do, choose the one that creates more learning. If neither does, say no. Speed in decision-making creates momentum because it reduces the time spent oscillating between options and increases the time spent executing. Develop emotional agility. Your feelings will always be part of the process, but they do not have to be the boss. Notice emotions without letting them dictate your actions. When anxiety rises, name it and then ask a practical question: what is the next useful step? When frustration appears, take a breath and choose the smallest forward motion. Emotional agility is not about suppressing feelings, it's about responding to them with curiosity and strategy. That skill keeps you steady when results lag and prevents temporary moods from derailing long-term plans. Delegate to multiply your impact. You cannot do everything yourself and still do the important things well. Delegation is not a sign of weakness, it's a force multiplier. Identify tasks that someone else can do at least adequately and hand them off. Teach clearly, set expectations, and then let go. The time you free up by delegating is the time you can invest in high-leverage activities that only you can do. Over time, building a reliable team around you increases your capacity more than any single hour of extra work ever could. Create a feedback-rich environment. Honest, timely feedback is the fastest route to improvement. Seek it from people who will tell you what you need to hear, not just what you want to hear. Make feedback a regular part of your process rather than a rare event. When you normalize critique, you remove the drama from correction and make iteration natural. Use feedback to refine your approach, to spot blind spots, and to accelerate learning. The faster you incorporate new information, the faster you improve. Practice strategic patience. Some results compound slowly and require steady input over long periods. Learn to distinguish between impatience that signals a need to change tactics and impatience that is simply discomfort with slow progress. When the strategy is sound, keep showing up. When the strategy is flawed, change it quickly. Strategic patience is the balance between persistence and adaptability. It keeps you committed without turning stubbornness into a liability. Design your environment to reduce friction for the behaviors you want. If you want to write every morning, make the writing environment inviting and remove obstacles that make it easy to skip. If you want to eat better, keep healthy options visible and convenient. Small environmental nudges add up because they reduce the number of decisions you must make and lower the activation energy for good habits. Think of your surroundings as a silent partner in your success. Arrange them to support the person you intend to become. Use constraints to spark creativity. Paradoxically, limits often produce better work than unlimited freedom. When you give yourself a tight deadline, a narrow scope, or a small budget, you force creative problem solving. Constraints focus attention and encourage resourcefulness. Instead of seeing limits as barriers, treat them as design challenges that sharpen your thinking and produce clearer outcomes. Keep a short list of the 1 to 3 outcomes that matter most each quarter. Long lists dilute effort. A concise set of priorities aligns your daily actions with meaningful progress. Review those outcomes weekly and ask whether your current tasks are moving you toward them. If not, stop doing them. This ruthless clarity prevents busywork from masquerading as productivity and ensures your energy is spent on what truly counts. Practice micro-rest throughout the day. Short, intentional breaks restore focus and prevent decision fatigue. A 5-minute walk, a brief stretch, or a moment of deep breathing can reset your attention and improve the quality of the next work block. Rest is not the opposite of productivity, it is a component of sustainable performance. When you respect recovery, you maintain higher levels of output over longer periods. Tell a future-focused story about your work. The narrative you carry about why you do what you do shapes how you show up. Frame your daily tasks as contributions to a larger purpose. When the immediate work feels mundane, the story provides meaning. It connects small actions to a bigger outcome and keeps motivation anchored when short-term results are scarce. Practice radical clarity in communication. Clear, concise messages save time and reduce misunderstandings. When you assign work, state the desired outcome, the deadline, and the constraints. When you ask for help, be specific about what you need. Clear communication reduces back and forth, speeds execution, and builds trust. It also creates a culture where people can act without constant clarification. Invest in your learning edge. Identify the skills that will matter most in the next phase of your life and allocate time to develop them. Focused practice beats scattered learning. Choose one skill to improve deeply for a season and measure progress in small, observable ways. Skill development is an investment that compounds because it increases the quality of every hour you work. Celebrate progress in ways that reinforce identity. When you complete meaningful work, mark it. A brief acknowledgement, a note in a journal, or a small ritual signals to your brain that the effort was worthwhile. These moments of recognition are not indulgent, they are reinforcement that makes the behavior more likely to repeat. Finally, keep your horizon long and your steps small. Ambitious goals require patience, but they also require daily action. Break big visions into tiny, repeatable behaviors and then protect the time and energy to do them. Over months and years, those small actions accumulate into a life that matches your intentions. The compound effect is quiet but relentless. Stay consistent, stay curious, and keep building the systems that make your best work inevitable. If you want concise prompts and practical nudges to support these practices, Momentum Audiobooks offers short cues that fit into a busy life. Use those reminders to keep the habits alive, but remember the real transformation happens in the steady, repeated choices you make each day. Decide what kind of influence you want to have and then act in ways that build it steadily. Influence is not an accident, it's the result of consistent behavior that others can rely on. Start by being useful. Offer help without expectation, share what you learn, and show up when it matters. Over time, those small contributions accumulate into a reputation that opens doors. Influence grows when people see you solve problems, keep your word, and treat others with respect. It is earned through repeated, visible acts, not through announcements or self-promotion. When you focus on being genuinely helpful, opportunities and trust follow naturally. Learn to communicate with clarity and purpose. The ability to explain what you want, why it matters, and what the next step is will save you time and create alignment. Clear communication reduces friction, prevents misunderstandings, and speeds execution. When you speak, lead with the outcome you want and the constraints you face. When you listen, seek to understand the other person's priorities before offering solutions. Conversations that begin with clarity end with action. Practice concise language and avoid the temptation to over-explain. Brevity forces you to think more precisely and makes it easier for others to respond. Build a practice of teaching what you learn. Teaching is a powerful accelerator for both your growth and the growth of others. When you explain a concept to someone else, you clarify your own thinking and identify gaps in your knowledge. Share practical lessons in short, usable formats, a quick note, a brief demonstration, or a short recording. Teaching creates a multiplier effect because the people you help will often pass the ideas forward. Over time, a culture of shared learning raises the level of everyone around you and creates a network of reciprocal support. Develop a habit of strategic generosity. Give time, attention, and resources to people and projects that align with your values and long-term goals. Generosity is not about being indiscriminate, it's about investing in relationships and initiatives that matter. When you give strategically, you build goodwill and create allies who will support you when you need it. Generosity also shifts your focus away from scarcity and toward abundance, which reduces anxiety and opens your mind to creative possibilities. Practice decision hygiene. Make it easy to decide by creating rules and frameworks for common choices. When you face recurring decisions, set a default and a simple exception process. For example, decide in advance how you will evaluate new opportunities. Does this move me toward my top priorities, and can I commit the necessary time? If the answer is no, decline quickly. Decision hygiene reduces the mental load of constant evaluation and prevents small choices from draining energy that should be reserved for high-leverage work. Create rituals that mark transitions and preserve your focus. Rituals are not superstition, they are practical cues that help your brain shift states. A short ritual before deep work, closing your email, clearing your desk, taking 3 breaths, signals to your mind that it's time to concentrate. A closing ritual at the end of a session, writing 1 sentence about progress and the next step, prepares you to return with clarity. These small, repeatable acts reduce friction and protect your attention across the day. Cultivate a bias toward clarity over certainty. You will rarely have perfect information, and waiting for certainty is a form of procrastination. Instead, gather enough information to make a clear decision and then act. Clarity is about knowing the next step, certainty is about predicting the future. Favor clarity. Make a decision that moves you forward, observe the results, and adjust. This approach keeps you adaptive and prevents analysis paralysis. Protect your creative capacity by scheduling time for unstructured thinking. Not every minute needs to be productive in the conventional sense. Allow blocks of time for exploration, for reading without an agenda, for sketching ideas without judgment. These windows are where new connections form and where long-term breakthroughs often begin. Treat creative time as a strategic investment rather than a luxury. Guard it from meetings and shallow tasks. Practice graceful exits. Knowing when to stop or to pivot is as important as knowing when to start. If a project no longer serves your priorities or the evidence shows it won't deliver, have the courage to close it and reallocate your energy. Exits free up capacity for higher impact work and prevent your calendar from becoming a museum of unfinished commitments. Closing with intention preserves dignity and creates space for new beginnings. Develop a simple system for managing interruptions. Interruptions are inevitable, but their cost is not. Create a short script you can use to defer interruptions politely, acknowledge the request, offer a time to reconnect, and note the impact on your current focus. This practice protects your deep work while maintaining good relationships. Over time, people will learn when to approach you and when to schedule time, which reduces friction and increases productivity. Invest in the people around you. The most sustainable progress comes from teams and communities, not from lone effort. Mentor others, delegate thoughtfully, and build structures that allow people to contribute at their best. When you invest in others' growth, you multiply your own impact. Strong teams create resilience because the work does not depend on a single person's energy or availability. Keep a long-term ledger of your choices. Periodically review the decisions you've made and the habits you've formed. Ask whether they are moving you toward the life you want to build. Use that ledger to make small course corrections rather than dramatic overhauls. Incremental adjustments compound into significant change, and a steady review process keeps you aligned with your values and goals. Finally, remember that legacy is built in the ordinary moments. The daily choices you make, how you treat people, how you manage your time, how you respond to setbacks, accumulate into a life that either reflects your intentions or drifts away from them. Focus on the small, consistent acts that express the person you want to be. Over years, those acts become the story others tell about you. If you want concise prompts and practical nudges to help maintain these practices, Momentum Audiobooks offers short cues that fit into a busy life. Use those reminders to support your daily work, but know that the real transformation happens in the steady, repeated choices you make each day. Sustainability is the quiet skill that separates short bursts of change from a life that actually shifts. It's one thing to start a habit with energy, it's another to make that habit part of your daily rhythm so it survives stress, travel, and the inevitable low motivation days. The secret is to design practices that fit into the life you already have, not into an idealized version of yourself. That means choosing actions that are small enough to repeat, meaningful enough to matter, and flexible enough to survive interruptions. When a habit can bend without breaking, it becomes durable. Think of your habits as seasons rather than single events. Some seasons require intense focus and long hours, others require maintenance and gentle attention. Learn to shift your pace without abandoning the direction. During high-intensity seasons you might push harder, accept more discomfort, and compress learning. During maintenance seasons you protect recovery, consolidate gains, and keep the core practices alive with less drama. Both phases are necessary. The ability to move between them without guilt is a form of mastery. Create renewal rituals that restore your capacity and sharpen your purpose. Renewal is not optional, it's the fuel for sustained effort. Design simple practices that reconnect you to why you started. A weekly pause to review progress, a monthly check-in with a mentor, or a quarterly retreat to reassess priorities can prevent slow drift. These rituals don't have to be elaborate. The point is to create predictable moments where you step back, celebrate what's working, and adjust what isn't. Those pauses keep momentum honest and prevent small problems from becoming entrenched. Learn to scale your impact by multiplying your habits through others. Teaching, mentoring, and documenting your processes are ways to amplify what you've learned. When you explain a practice to someone else, you clarify it for yourself and create a ripple effect. Build simple guides, record short lessons, or host a brief session with a colleague. The act of sharing turns private progress into public value and creates a network of people who can carry the work forward with you. Guard your attention like a scarce resource. In a world designed to fragment focus, protecting attention is a radical act. Create clear boundaries around your most important work and defend them consistently. Use visible signals to show when you are unavailable. Make it easy for others to respect your time by communicating expectations clearly. The fewer interruptions you accept, the deeper your work becomes and the more meaningful your output will be. Attention is the soil where all other habits grow. Practice gratitude as a stabilizer, not as a performance enhancer. Gratitude shifts your baseline from scarcity to sufficiency, which makes it easier to persist when progress is slow. Take a moment each day to note what went well and who helped you. That simple habit reduces stress, increases resilience, and keeps your motivation anchored in reality rather than in a chase for more. Gratitude doesn't replace ambition, it steadies it. Be intentional about how you celebrate milestones. Recognition is a signal to your brain that the behavior is valuable. Choose celebrations that reinforce identity rather than indulgence. A short note of thanks, a public acknowledgement of effort, or a small ritual that marks completion can be more powerful than a lavish reward. These moments of recognition create positive feedback loops that make the habit more likely to repeat. Develop a practice of strategic subtraction. Growth often comes from removing what doesn't work rather than adding more. Periodically audit your commitments and ask what can be stopped, delegated, or simplified. The discipline to subtract is as important as the discipline to add. When you clear away the non-essential, you create space for the few things that truly move the needle. Cultivate humility in success. When things go well, the temptation is to assume it was all skill or to chase ever larger wins. Instead, use success as an opportunity to learn what actually produced the result and to document the conditions that made it possible. Share credit, acknowledge the role of others, and use the momentum to reinforce the systems that created the outcome. Humility keeps you teachable and prevents success from becoming a trap. Invest in relationships as a core habit. The people around you shape your thinking, your energy, and your opportunities. Prioritize a few relationships that matter and invest in them consistently. Show up, listen, and offer help without keeping score. Those investments compound into trust, collaboration, and unexpected openings. Relationships are not a side effect of success, they are a primary engine of it. Practice adaptive planning. Long-term goals require a plan, but rigid plans break under real-world pressure. Use a flexible roadmap that sets direction but allows for course corrections. Break big goals into short cycles of action and review. After each cycle, ask what worked, what didn't, and what the next small experiment should be. This iterative approach keeps you moving while reducing the risk of wasted effort. Keep a learning ledger. Record the experiments you run, the outcomes you observe, and the adjustments you make. Over time, this ledger becomes a powerful resource that shows patterns and reveals leverage points. It also protects you from repeating the same mistakes and helps you scale what works. The habit of documenting small experiments turns intuition into evidence. Finally, anchor everything in a clear sense of purpose. Habits are easier to sustain when they are connected to something larger than immediate results. Define the contribution you want to make and remind yourself regularly how daily actions connect to that contribution. Purpose is not a motivational slogan, it's a compass that guides choices when the path is unclear. When your habits are aligned with purpose, discipline becomes less about force and more about fidelity to a chosen direction. Sustaining change is not glamorous. It's patient, steady, and often invisible. But the accumulation of small, well-chosen actions over time produces a life that matches your intentions. Protect your attention, design renewal rituals, teach what you learn, subtract what doesn't work, and keep a long-term view. Do these things consistently and the compound effect will carry you farther than any single burst of effort. If you want concise prompts and practical nudges to help maintain these practices, Momentum Audiobooks offers short cues that fit into a busy life. Use those reminders to support your daily work, but remember the real transformation happens in the steady, repeated choices you make each day. Start by making your habits invisible to willpower. The most durable routines are the ones you don't have to decide about each day. Design triggers that automatically cue the behavior you want. A specific place, a particular time, a short sensory cue, these are the scaffolding that carry action when motivation is low. When you tie a new practice to a reliable signal, you remove the daily negotiation and make the habit almost effortless. Over time, those small, repeated acts stop feeling like tasks and begin to feel like the natural way you move through the day. Next, learn to translate intention into tiny, repeatable moves. Ambitious goals are useful for direction, but they rarely guide the next step. Break ambition into micro-habits that can be completed in minutes. These micro-habits are the atoms of progress, a single paragraph written, a 5-minute walk, a short call to check in. When you stack those atoms consistently, they form the molecules of meaningful change. The trick is to make each micro-habit so small that resistance is negligible, and then to protect the sequence that strings them together. Practice the art of context switching with purpose. Life will demand different modes of thinking, creative, analytical, relational, and each mode requires a different environment and a different rhythm. Build short rituals that help you shift cleanly between modes. A 2-minute breathing exercise before a creative block, a quick review of objectives before a meeting, a tidy desk before deep work, these small rituals reduce the cost of switching and preserve the quality of your attention. When transitions are intentional, you waste less time reorienting and more time producing. Cultivate a habit of strategic curiosity. Instead of treating every problem as a failure or a threat, treat it as a question to be explored. Ask what assumptions you are making, what evidence you lack, and what small test could reveal the next useful insight. Curiosity keeps you learning without the paralysis of perfection. It turns obstacles into experiments and keeps your energy directed toward discovery rather than blame. Over time, a curious stance makes you more adaptable and less likely to be derailed by surprises. Make your calendar a tool for identity, not just a ledger of obligations. Schedule blocks that reflect the person you want to be and protect them as non-negotiable. If you want to be someone who writes, put writing blocks on the calendar and treat them like appointments with a client. If you want to be someone who exercises, schedule movement and honor it. The calendar becomes a visible contract with yourself, and honoring that contract builds self-respect. When your schedule reflects your priorities, your days begin to align with your long-term story. Practice deliberate generosity as a growth strategy. Helping others is not a detour from your goals, it is a way to expand your network, sharpen your thinking, and create reciprocal value. Offer time, feedback, or a small resource without immediate expectation. Those acts build goodwill and often return in unexpected ways. Generosity also shifts your focus outward, which reduces the anxiety that comes from over-focusing on your own progress. When you invest in others, you create a field of allies who amplify your efforts. Develop a simple decision framework to reduce friction. When choices pile up, energy drains and momentum stalls. Create a short set of criteria you can apply quickly. Does this move me toward my top priorities? Can I commit the time required? And what is the smallest test I can run? Use that framework to make fast, consistent decisions. Speed in decision-making creates forward motion because it converts deliberation into action. When you practice decisive clarity, you spend less time oscillating and more time executing. Build a practice of tidy endings. The way you close a day matters as much as how you start it. End each work session with a brief note, what you accomplished, what the next step is, and one thing you learned. That tidy ending reduces the cognitive load of returning to work and preserves momentum across sessions. It also creates a record of progress that you can review later, which reinforces the sense that your efforts are accumulating into something real. Protect your creative reserves by scheduling white space. Not every minute needs to be optimized for output. Leave blank time in your week for wandering, for reading without a goal, for conversations that have no agenda. Those unstructured moments are where connections form and new ideas emerge. Treat white space as a strategic resource rather than wasted time. When you protect it, you give your mind the room it needs to synthesize and innovate. Practice the discipline of subtraction. Growth often comes from removing what doesn't work rather than adding more. Periodically audit your commitments and ask what can be stopped, delegated, or simplified. The courage to subtract creates capacity for the few things that truly matter. When you clear away the non-essential, you sharpen focus and increase the impact of the actions you keep. Finally, anchor your daily work in a clear contribution. Habits are easier to sustain when they are connected to a purpose that matters beyond immediate results. Define the contribution you want to make, what you want to add to the world, who you want to help, or what problem you want to solve, and remind yourself how each small action connects to that contribution. Purpose is not a motivational poster, it is a compass that keeps you steady when progress is slow and distractions are loud. When your habits are aligned with a meaningful contribution, discipline becomes less about force and more about fidelity to a chosen direction. If you want concise prompts and short reminders to keep these practices alive, Momentum Audiobooks offers practical cues that fit into a busy life. Use those nudges to support your daily work, but remember the real transformation happens in the repeated, ordinary choices you make each day. Sustain the work by turning intention into a living practice that fits your real life. Habits that survive stress, travel, and low motivation are not the ones that demand perfection, they are the ones that bend without breaking. Choose actions that are small enough to repeat, meaningful enough to matter, and flexible enough to continue when circumstances change. When a habit can adapt, it becomes durable. Think of your routines as rhythms rather than rigid rules. Some seasons require intensity and sacrifice, other seasons require maintenance and gentle attention. Learn to shift your pace without abandoning the direction. During high-focus periods you may compress learning and accept more discomfort, during maintenance phases you protect recovery and consolidate gains. Both modes are necessary, and the ability to move between them without guilt is a form of mastery. Make renewal a regular part of your system. Renewal is not optional, it's the fuel for sustained effort. Design simple rituals that reconnect you to why you started. A weekly pause to review progress, a monthly conversation with a mentor, or a quarterly retreat to reassess priorities can prevent slow drift. These moments don't need to be elaborate. The point is to create predictable opportunities to step back, celebrate what's working, and adjust what isn't. Those pauses keep momentum honest and prevent small problems from becoming entrenched. Scale your impact by teaching and documenting what you learn. When you explain a practice to someone else, you clarify it for yourself and create a ripple effect. Build short guides, record brief lessons, or host a quick session with a colleague. Sharing turns private progress into public value and creates a network of people who can carry the work forward with you. Teaching is not a detour from productivity, it is a multiplier. The act of helping others learn often returns insights that improve your own practice. Guard your attention like a scarce resource. In a world designed to fragment focus, protecting attention is a radical act. Create clear boundaries around your most important work and defend them consistently. Use visible signals to show when you are unavailable. Make it easy for others to respect your time by communicating expectations clearly. The fewer interruptions you accept, the deeper your work becomes and the more meaningful your output will be. Attention is the soil where all other habits grow. Practice strategic subtraction. Growth often comes from removing what doesn't work rather than adding more. Periodically audit your commitments and ask what can be stopped, delegated, or simplified. The discipline to subtract is as important as the discipline to add. When you clear away the non-essential, you create space for the few things that truly move the needle. Subtraction is not defeat, it is focus. It allows you to invest your best energy where it matters most. Cultivate humility in success. When things go well, resist the urge to assume it was all skill or to chase ever larger wins without reflection. Use success as an opportunity to learn what actually produced the result and to document the conditions that made it possible. Share credit, acknowledge the role of others, and use momentum to reinforce the systems that created the outcome. Humility keeps you teachable and prevents success from becoming a trap that blinds you to new risks. Invest in relationships as a core habit. The people around you shape your thinking, your energy, and your opportunities. Prioritize a few relationships that matter and invest in them consistently. Show up, listen, and offer help without keeping score. Those investments compound into trust, collaboration, and unexpected openings. Relationships are not a side effect of success, they are a primary engine of it. When you build a network of reliable people, your capacity to finish, to scale, and to recover multiplies. Adopt adaptive planning. Long-term goals require a plan, but rigid plans break under real-world pressure. Use a flexible roadmap that sets direction but allows for course corrections. Break big goals into short cycles of action and review. After each cycle, ask what worked, what didn't, and what the next small experiment should be. This iterative approach keeps you moving while reducing the risk of wasted effort. It turns large ambitions into a sequence of manageable, testable steps. Keep a learning ledger. Record the experiments you run, the outcomes you observe, and the adjustments you make. Over time, this ledger becomes a powerful resource that shows patterns and reveals leverage points. It protects you from repeating the same mistakes and helps you scale what works. The habit of documenting small experiments turns intuition into evidence and makes decision-making faster and more reliable. Anchor everything in a clear sense of contribution. Habits are easier to sustain when they connect to something larger than immediate results. Define the contribution you want to make, what problem you want to solve, who you want to help, or what change you want to create, and remind yourself how daily actions connect to that contribution. Purpose is not a motivational poster, it is a compass that guides choices when the path is unclear. When your habits align with purpose, discipline becomes less about force and more about fidelity to a chosen direction. Design for resilience by building redundancy into your systems. Relying on a single tool, a single person, or a single routine creates vulnerability. Create backups, alternative ways to get work done, multiple sources of feedback, and a small reserve of time for recovery. Redundancy is not waste, it is insurance that keeps progress steady when unexpected events occur. Resilient systems absorb shocks and return to course faster. Practice ethical consistency. The habits you build shape not only your results but also the kind of person you become. Choose practices that align with your values and that you can defend publicly. Integrity compounds. When your daily actions match your stated principles, you build trust with yourself and with others. That trust becomes a resource in times of stress and a foundation for leadership. Celebrate milestones in ways that reinforce identity. Recognition is a signal to your brain that the behavior is valuable. Choose celebrations that reinforce who you want to be rather than indulgence that undermines progress. A brief note of thanks, a public acknowledgement of effort, or a small ritual that marks completion can be more powerful than a lavish reward. These moments of recognition create positive feedback loops that make the habit more likely to repeat. Finally, remember that the work of change is both ordinary and extraordinary. The daily choices you make, how you protect your attention, how you treat people, how you respond to setbacks, accumulate into a life that either reflects your intentions or drifts away from them. Focus on the small, consistent acts that express the person you want to be. Over years, those acts become the story others tell about you. Keep the horizon long and the steps small. Protect your energy, teach what you learn, subtract what doesn't work, and keep a steady ledger of experiments. The compound effect is quiet but relentless. Stay consistent, stay curious, and let the daily practice carry you forward. Build a practice of intentional momentum that doesn't rely on adrenaline or novelty. Real progress is less about dramatic bursts and more about creating a steady forward motion that survives interruptions, boredom, and setbacks. To do that, design small, repeatable actions that connect directly to the outcomes you care about. Make those actions obvious, easy to start, and meaningful enough that they matter even when energy is low. When the next step is clear and simple, you remove the friction that turns good intentions into unfinished projects. Shift your focus from outcomes you can't control to behaviors you can. Results are shaped by many forces, some outside your influence. What you can control is the pattern of your days. Choose a handful of behaviors that, if repeated, will reliably move the needle. Protect those behaviors with rules that are non-negotiable. When you anchor your identity to the practice rather than to a distant result, you create a stable foundation for long-term growth. Identity-based habits change how you see yourself, and that new self-image makes consistent action easier. Develop a practice of micro-optimization. Small adjustments, when applied consistently, compound into large advantages. Look for tiny improvements in how you start, how you finish, and how you recover. Maybe it's a slightly earlier wake time, a clearer note at the end of a work session, or a 5-minute review that prevents repeated mistakes. These micro-changes don't require willpower, they require attention. Over months, the cumulative effect of small refinements becomes the difference between stagnation and steady advancement. Make your commitments visible. When a goal lives only in your head, it's easy to let it fade. Write down the specific behaviors you will do and when you will do them. Put them on your calendar as appointments with yourself. Share a simple progress update with a trusted person. Visibility creates accountability and reduces the chance that good intentions will be crowded out by urgent but unimportant demands. The act of making a commitment public, even in a small way, increases the likelihood you will follow through. Practice adaptive resilience. Resilience is not about enduring everything without change, it's about bending and returning. When plans break, respond with curiosity: what shifted, what can be salvaged, and what's the smallest next step that moves things forward? Use setbacks as signals to adjust systems rather than as proof of personal failure. That mindset keeps you learning and prevents temporary obstacles from becoming permanent derailments. Invest in the scaffolding that supports your best work. Systems matter more than motivation. A tidy workspace, a predictable morning routine, a short list of prioritized tasks, these are not glamorous, but they reduce friction and preserve attention. Build templates for recurring work so you don't reinvent the process each time. Create a short checklist that moves projects from idea to execution. The less you have to decide in the moment, the more energy you have for the creative and strategic parts of the job. Cultivate a practice of selective exposure. Your environment includes the people you spend time with, the media you consume, and the conversations you join. Be intentional about those inputs. Seek out voices that challenge you constructively, information that expands your perspective, and relationships that hold you to higher standards. At the same time, limit exposure to noise that drains energy or fosters comparison. Curating your inputs is a form of self-care that preserves focus and accelerates growth. Make learning a deliberate loop. Don't just consume information, test it quickly and measure the result. Run short experiments, gather feedback, and iterate. Learning that isn't applied is entertainment, learning that is tested becomes advantage. Keep a simple record of experiments and outcomes so you can see patterns over time. That record becomes a practical guide for what to scale and what to stop. Practice generosity as a strategic habit. Helping others, sharing what you learn, and offering support without immediate return builds social capital that pays off in unexpected ways. Generosity creates allies, opens doors, and strengthens your network. It also shifts your focus outward, which reduces the anxiety that comes from over-focusing on your own progress. When you give, you often receive insights, opportunities, and goodwill that accelerate your own work. Design for graceful exits. Not every project deserves indefinite effort. Learn to recognize when a path is no longer aligned with your priorities or when the evidence shows it won't deliver. Closing a project intentionally frees resources for higher impact work. Exits are not failures, they are strategic reallocations of attention. Practice ending things cleanly so you can move on without carrying unnecessary baggage. Protect your creative reserves by scheduling white space. Unstructured time is where synthesis happens, where ideas connect and new directions emerge. Treat that time as essential, not optional. Use it for reading without an agenda, for walking without a plan, or for conversations that aren't strictly transactional. Those moments often produce the breakthroughs that structured work cannot. Keep a long-term ledger of choices. Periodically review the decisions you've made and the habits you've formed. Ask whether they are moving you toward the life you want to build. Use that ledger to make small course corrections rather than dramatic overhauls. Incremental adjustments compound into significant change, and a steady review process keeps you aligned with your values and goals. Finally, anchor everything in a clear contribution. Habits are easier to sustain when they connect to something larger than immediate results. Define the contribution you want to make, who you want to help, what problem you want to solve, or what change you want to create, and remind yourself how daily actions connect to that contribution. Purpose is not a slogan, it's a compass that guides choices when the path is unclear. When your habits align with purpose, discipline becomes less about force and more about fidelity to a chosen direction. If you want concise prompts and practical nudges to keep these practices alive, Momentum Audiobooks offers short cues that fit into a busy life. Use those reminders to support your daily work, but remember the real transformation happens in the steady, repeated choices you make each day. Start by deciding what "done" looks like before you begin. If you can't finish the whole project, define a tidy milestone you can complete in one session. Make the first action obvious and small so you don't waste energy deciding where to start. When the next step is clear, momentum follows. Turn recurring choices into simple rules. If X happens, do Y. Defaults reduce friction and save willpower for the decisions that matter. Use your calendar as a contract with yourself, block non-negotiable focus time and protect it like an appointment with someone important. Design systems that make good behavior the path of least resistance. Habit stack small practices onto routines you already have. Use templates, checklists, and short rituals to enter and exit work. These structures don't remove effort, but they make the right effort automatic and repeatable. Manage your energy as deliberately as you manage your time. Schedule demanding work when your focus is strongest, and use lower energy windows for routine tasks. Prioritize sleep, movement, and short recovery breaks. These are investments that increase the quality and quantity of your productive hours. Protect your attention. Single task during focus blocks, close unrelated tabs, silence notifications, and make interruptions harder. Small barriers to distraction preserve deep work and let you produce more in less time. Treat setbacks as information, not identity. When a plan stalls, ask what the data shows and what one small test you can run next. Short experiments and quick feedback loops beat waiting for perfect conditions. Iterate fast, learn, and adjust. Teach what you learn. Explaining a process clarifies your thinking and makes knowledge reproducible. Document essential steps, create brief guides, and hand off work with tidy checklists. Multiplying your methods through others scales your impact far more than extra hours ever will. Be ruthless about priorities. Use a simple filter: does this move me toward my top outcomes? If not, delegate, delay, or stop it. Subtraction creates space for the few things that truly matter and prevents busywork from masquerading as progress. Build rituals that mark transitions. A 2-minute cue before deep work and a short closing note after a session reduce decision fatigue and preserve momentum across days. End each session with a clear next step so you can return without friction. Cultivate curiosity instead of judgment. When things go wrong, ask what you missed and what you can try differently. Curiosity turns obstacles into experiments and keeps you learning rather than shrinking from failure. Make commitments visible. Write down the behaviors you will repeat, put them on your calendar, and share progress with a trusted person. Visibility creates accountability and makes follow-through more likely. Invest in relationships and generosity. Help others without keeping score, give feedback, and be useful. Generosity builds goodwill and networks that return value in unexpected ways. Strong relationships multiply your capacity and create resilience. Design for resilience and redundancy. Alternate seasons of intensity with maintenance phases. Build backups for critical processes and plan for transitions when key people move on. Resilient systems absorb shocks and get you back on course faster. Keep a short, regular review practice. Weekly, note a few lessons, wins, and experiments. Monthly, document a process or teach a skill. Quarterly, reassess priorities and subtract what no longer serves. These brief pauses keep your work adaptive and aligned. Celebrate completion in small, meaningful ways. A note in a journal, a public acknowledgement, or a short ritual signals that finishing matters. Those signals reinforce the habit of closing loops and free mental space for the next work. Anchor daily actions to a clear contribution. Define the problem you want to solve or the people you want to help, and remind yourself how small tasks connect to that contribution. Purpose is the compass that makes discipline feel like fidelity rather than force. Finally, make the practice durable by choosing habits that bend without breaking. Small, repeatable actions that fit your real life survive travel, stress, and low motivation. Protect your attention, teach what you learn, subtract what doesn't work, and keep the horizon long. Over time, the quiet accumulation of these choices produces results that feel inevitable. Finish one meaningful thing today. Close a loop, write the next step, and protect the time to do it again tomorrow.